Vernomatic Productions.
Are you ready?
Live from the Metal Mayhem Studios in Rochester, New York.
We are gold.
And heard around the world by metalheads just like you. This is Metal Mayhem ROC.
Heavy metal music.
Your weekly dose of metal music, interviews, album reviews, news, and more. Want to be part of the show? Send us a message through our website, metalmayhemroc.com, or hit us up on Facebook and Twitter. Search Metal Mayhem ROC, a proud member of the Pantheon podcast team.
It's getting nice and heavy.
Now, welcome our hosts, John the Vernomatic Verno, and direct from New Jersey, Metal Walt.
Good evening, everybody. Hope everyone's enjoying late August. Summer's coming in for a landing, but the rock and roll is just picking up. Tonight's episode, Metal Walt sits down with legendary guitarist Alex Skolnick. Alex shares his insights on the upcoming 10th anniversary Metal Allegiance show in New Jersey. This show, it's the East Coast version of this Metal Allegiance reunion. You may recall back in January, right around the NAMM convention, we had Dave Elfson on talking about NAMM and the West Coast Metal Allegiance show. Well, September 6th, down in Sayreville, New Jersey at the Starland Ballroom, the East Coast version is going to be going on. And Alex is here to talk with Metal Walt, everything about this event. The concept and evolution of the Metal Allegiance, including the rotation of musicians in the band. They share insights on the songwriting process and how they select each vocalist for each track. Now, over in this gig on the 6th of September, again, down at the Starland Ballroom in Sayreville, New Jersey, there's going to be the return of the core four, David Ellefson, Mark Menji, Mike Portnoy, and Alex Skolnick. But they're going to be joined by John Bush, Dave Davidson, Troy Sanders, and many, many more. You don't even know who's going to be there. So again, it's September 6th, 2024, down at the Starland Ballroom, Sayreville, New Jersey. Metal Walt will be there doing exclusive press with interviews and pictures and all that. But in this interview, again, Alex shares reflections of his time in Testament, you know, his day job, if you will. Talks about the summer tour they just did and the upcoming tour with Testament. He goes back with some reflections on his time in Savatage in the creation of the Handful of Rain album. And he also discusses the impact of the Trans-Siberian Orchestra and how it helped shape his career. Whether you're a lifetime fan or new to Alex's work, this episode offers an in-depth look at the life and career of one of metal's most versatile guitarists. I learned a lot. I just edited it, and I'm telling you, man, what a great guy. I had a chance to see Testament several times and actually met him last summer at the Metallica shows, but I couldn't make this interview because work called, but Metal Walt went solo, and it's a good one. If you enjoy the content we're doing here, please consider leaving a review on Apple, Spotify, or Amazon, and subscribe to the podcast. And stay connected to our community and join the email list by going up to our website, metalmayhemroc.com. Sign up for the newsletter that will get you alerts on new shows, YouTube interviews, reminders about our radio show on Monday nights that I do on Metal Devastation Radio, CDs, concert reviews, and we have a brand new merch page with tons of goodies, kids. Men's t-shirts, women's fitted shirts, hoodies, drinkware, stickers, and coming out this week, brand new cell phone cases. So that's up at their website, metalmayhemroc.com. All right, let's do this. Metal Walt, Alex Skolnick, talking about the upcoming 10th anniversary Metal Allegiance show in New Jersey. I'm the Vernomatic, and this is Metal Mayhem ROC.
So today we're joined by guitarist Alex Skolnick, founding member of the supergroup Metal Allegiance, who joins us to promote the upcoming East Coast 10th anniversary show coming up in New Jersey in September. Alex is a master of his craft in both metal and jazz, and he's checking in to give us on the scoop on this highly anticipated show. So Alex, welcome to Metal Mayhem ROC.
Thanks so much, Walt. Glad to be here, and thank you for that great introduction. I don't know how to follow that.
Well, that's okay. So, Alex, do appreciate you jumping on today to talk about Metal Allegiance and, again, your long, illustrious career in metal and both jazz as well. But wanted to start off by talking a little bit about the background of Metal Allegiance. So, I mean, obviously, this is the 10th anniversary of the band. It was started by, your founding member, Mark Menji, who's a player himself, but he's also an industry guy. And the core four members are you, of course, and Mark, Dave Ellefson, and Mike Portnoy. But what I always found interesting about this, maybe for the listeners who are not as familiar with the band, is you guys have like a rotating cast of characters that both play on the album and live. I mean, you go down the list if you look at your history. I mean, I'm just going to name a few. Phil Anselmo, Randy Blythe, Troy Sanders, Chuck Billy, Bobby Blitz, Bron Daler, John Bush, Mark Tornillo, Max Cavalera, Phil Demmel, Andreas Kitzer, and there's probably another 20 names. So just talk about like the concept of Metal Allegiance and this whole community feel that you guys have been doing this for like 10 years.
Yeah, well, when you read the names down like that, it really sounds impressive. And you realize how many people are involved and from all levels of the music scene. It's a lot of fun. Everybody has a good time. It's a great way for folks to get out of their comfort zone and out of the camp, so to speak, of their individual bands, and just be in a whole new situation and work together, but also have a good time doing it. And like you said, we started by Mark Mengi, who is also has a foot in the industry, particularly working with products. And originally, he was getting players together to demo music products and turn that into a show. So he would get, instead of it being a clinic of just one or two artists, he would get multiple artists and put a whole show together and sell tickets, turn it into a concert. And at that time, it was all covers, and it was called Metal Masters. And it was also done with Q&A and audience participation and all that. It evolved into Metal Allegiance when he and Portnoy and Ellefson decided to start working on original music for this thing. And they wanted a guitar player to work with. And interestingly, I hadn't yet done one of those clinics. And we all ended up together on a cruise. And it was the motorboat cruise, one of the last cruises with the original Motorhead. One of the last years of Lemmy's life. So in a way, he indirectly had a lot to do with it. And we got together on that ship. It was the first time I'd played with them, and they mentioned to me that they were talking about doing original music and wanted somebody to work with, somebody that's not in any of the bands of the other guys. So it's totally separate. And we just hit it off and wrote music really fast. We had spent a whole long extended weekend at Mike Portnoy's place writing music, and then just plotting who was going to sing on each song, and eventually doing the record, and that it just led to a second album. And we still do covers as well, but it's no longer a clinic, it's no longer a Q&A, it's a full-on concert. And you've also got guys running on and off stage every song or two. So it has the feel of a variety show, almost.
Yeah. I was going to, you sort of answered the question, but I was very curious from a songwriting perspective, do you write the music and the songs first and then go, that feels like a John Bush song? Or do you say, hey, Chuck Billy's on board with this. What would Chuck be thinking about if he was to deliver? Or do you go to the artist and say, hey, we got Bobby Blitz, and let him come into Mike's house and then say, guys, we're going to sit in a room and we're going to write a song together? How does that whole thing work?
Well, with all of those songs, we wrote the music first, then decided on lyrics and vocal patterns, and then decided who was going to be singing. Sometimes, while we were working on a song, we might bring up a name and say, oh, you know what, imagine so-and-so singing to this. But other times we would just write the song, come up with a melody, and then decide, okay, what type of voice do we want? Do we want a more melodic voice? Do we want more of a growling voice? Do we want a high-pitched voice? Do we want a female voice? And, we've used all those different types of voices. And each song has sort of called for a different type of timbre, but we never really know until the song is finished.
And do you guys actually write the lyrics first too, or do you actually ask for contributions from the vocalist on the lyrical content?
It depends. Some singers just want us to hand them a song, lyrics and all. And we all contribute to the lyrics. I would say Mark Mengy is actually one of the main lyric writers. He's really got a knack for coming up with a lot of words. I'm more of an editor, although I have come up with a lot of the lyrics, but I'm good at sort of taking his lyrics and chopping them up and just turning them into melodies. There are a few songs, some of the top songs that we do actually happen that way, where Mark would come up with enough lyrics for 3 songs and help shape it into a song. But then there's a few that were written by Ellison. I think Mike even might have done some lyrics as well. But then there are occasional songs and occasional singers where they got it. They want to do it, and we're wide open. We kind of give them the option. Phil Anselmo, for example, is somebody who he's got his vision. He will put his stamp on it. So all those lyrics on his song, Dying Song, that's all him. None of us could have come up with that. I don't think anybody else could have, and I don't think anybody else could have sang it the way he did.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing too, because logistically this has to be difficult to do, right? Because it takes a lot of coordination. Sounds like maybe Mark, being an industry guy, he knows how to kind of orchestrate all this and keep it together. But yeah, it's really interesting because again, you guys have 2 full studio length albums, the self-titled album and then Power Drunk Majesty, the one that came out a few years ago, and then the Little Fallen Heroes EP that came out. Alex, what about when it comes to your contributions? Like, you've been in so many bands, written so much material, guested on so many, let's say, other collaborations, but how do you personally approach it, let's say, versus thinking about that Next Testament album? How do you go about contributing things? Is it kind of one and the same, or is it a slight different approach than maybe what you do with Chuck and the guys from Testament?
Testament is its own universe, and things happen a certain way. That it was founded by Eric Peterson, guitarist, and basically he has to sign off on everything. Yeah, it was his band. So even though I've contributed a lot of music to it, we've co-written a lot of stuff. More recently, I've brought in whole songs that he's got to like it. And sometimes, he has, very certain tastes. He might not like something, even if it seems like it might work for the group. It's really up to him. Whereas Metal Allegiance, it's really up to the 4 of us. But I think there's a lot more openness, partially because there's 4 of us, but also because there are going to be different vocalists. So we don't have to think about our one person that's going to be singing all the songs. We also don't have to think about what we did before, what the fans like versus one record or another. It's just more of an open canvas. So with Testament, you do have to think about, okay, we've established a sound. There's something there that fans expect at this point. And you want to give them what they want, but you also don't want to be dictated by what they want. And you have to make it interesting for you as well. And it's a fine balance. And sometimes fans don't know what they, Metallica was brilliant. They take a song like Master of Puppets, where it just breaks down in the middle and becomes a super slow ballad. I mean, I think at that time, if you asked Metallica fans if they want that, they would have thought it was crazy. Why would you even ask? But, that's an example of knowing what people want before they know. And now you can't imagine it any other way. So you have to be able to think, beyond. You can't be afraid of what the audience will think. But I think the more history you have as a band, the harder that is, because bands respond to certain albums and certain songs, and you want them to like it. But with Metal Allegiance, every time everything is so fresh and so open, because we have the different vocalists on every song. We don't feel any of that pressure or limitation.
Yeah, it's true. And I'm thinking about a band like Rush, like we all are big Rush fans. Sure you are as well, right? And how many years and albums, even towards the later part of their career, where they wrote albums where, Alan and Geddy and Neil were just saying, we're going to write for ourselves. What kind of sparks us creativity wise? But, we obviously have to keep to the traditions of what we do best, but we're going to get in certain segments of songs. Like I think of a song like Resist or some of these other materials, maybe that came out on Clockwork Angels, that are a little bit unorthodox for the band. And it's up to the fans to say, hey, do you like it or not? I mean, there's always going to be this traditionists that are going to say, oh, you know what? It's not Ritchie Blackmore and Deep Purple, therefore Deep Purple sucks. Well, I call bullshit on that, because I think Deep Purple's still great. They got a great new album out. They were great with Steve Morse, and they keep reinventing themselves as new players come in and out. And I think that's the trick to having bands that are around 30, 40, 50 years, right?
I think that's important. And I would rather hear something new and something different. I mean, then there's other situations. You're never going to buy an AC/DC record and put it on and say, oh my God, what did they do? I was not expecting one. No, you know exactly what you're getting. The question is, how good will they make it? But it's still this very definite thing you're expecting, and it never is going to deviate too much from that, and you wouldn't have it any other way. Because
no, exactly. We have a segment on our show called Heavy Metal. We have Heavy Metal History and Rock and Roll Detention, where we take a certain body of work and we kind of geek out on it. And we've done some episodes where we've come up with like the best deep tracks of a band or whatever. And my co-host said, well, we should do one for AC/DC. And I said, you can't do one for AC/DC because I love their old catalog, but where do you find the contrast there? And he's a real AC/DC fan. So he says, well, no way. There's stuff in there. But as a generalist, you think about it all the same. But anyway.
Metal Mayhem ROC.
Hey, Alex, as you get into like the live setting of Metal Allegiance, so I was looking at, let's say some of your history again. You've been doing shows for 10 years, and you guys have played, I don't know, everywhere from the St. Vitus Bar in Brooklyn, which I heard just closed its doors, to, I know, it's such a great place, but you have, you guys played festivals in Rock in Rio and in Japan and Mexico, and you played, all the mid-sized clubs all up and down the East Coast and the West Coast. and you said you got your start on that motorboat cruise, but like, talk about the live setting. Like, are there any particular shows that you guys have done? Because you don't do them. It's not like you're doing 20 shows a year. You might do 2, 3, 4 a year, and then you come back a year later. Any great memories of any particular shows that come to mind that you want to share?
Well, we got to Japan once, a festival called Loud Park, and that was amazing. That was just, playing Japan is always a blast. And yeah, I don't even know if our album had come out there at that point, but if I may say, the Metal Allegiance material is quite strong, and people who haven't heard it before seem to latch onto it right away. And I remember in Japan, that was an example of it. They were just responding to it as though they'd been hearing it for years, which is really cool. We had another fun festival appearance at the Bloodstock Festival in the UK, which is always a good time. And trying to remember, it's over in recent years, we haven't been able to play that much. I mean, there was the COVID period, and also just with everybody's schedules, it's very challenging. I mean, I'm literally spending months on the road this year, so it's really hard for me to do it. But when we do it once in a while, it's special, and it is a very different type of show.
Yeah, because the shows are all about, you're pulling select tracks off of your albums, and then it becomes kind of like, I guess, whatever, let's call it covers or metal classics that you guys choose that you feel is appropriate. And I've seen the set lists, and, like, it's not the same set list every time you come around, and you're drawing from all kinds of material, and it also depends on what singers are showing up as well. But to put together a great package night where you're getting 2 solid hours of 15 to 20 metal classics with some Metal Allegiance original stuff there, and guys coming on and off the stage, I mean, that's a unique show. I mean, I've actually never seen you guys yet, and I'm really excited for this show. So let's get into, like, the Sayreville show. So just for everybody to know, so you got your 10th anniversary East Coast show coming up. It's Friday night, September the 6th at the Starland Ballroom in Sayreville, New Jersey. And I believe it's the first show you guys have done since the early part of this year in Anaheim. We had Dave Ellefson on our show right around that time of NAMM, and he was talking all about it and all the other events that were happening this week. So talk about this upcoming show. Like, is it going to be Jersey-centric? Will there be, who's coming on board? Because as you know, like, that Sayreville spot is right in the heart of Central Jersey. It's right outside of Old Bridge, New Jersey, and we know, like, those days of deep history there, right, where John and Marcia Zazula, Megaforce Records, the guys of Overkill and Metallica cutting their teeth there. There's the ghosts of metal are right in that neighborhood.
Yeah, there's so much metal history in Jersey. I don't think people realize it at first. Yes, Megaforce was such an important part of it. Zakk Wylde is a Jersey guy. It's just amazing to think about. Yeah, the Misfits, even, they're sort of metal adjacent. It's pretty endless. And, one key Jersey figure that is part of Metal Allegiance is Bobby Blitz. And unfortunately, the schedule didn't allow for him to be there. It's insane that he's not there. He is very much a part of it, and he was there in earlier this year when we did our show. And Mark Tornillo is going to be there, who's the current vocalist for Accept, former vocalist for TT Quick, and Doc from God Forbid, who's now in Bad Wolves. He's going to join us, and he brings a whole different flavor. And we've also got John Bush. We've got Troy Sanders from Mastodon. We've got Dave Davidson from Revocation, one of the newer bands in extreme metal, great band. And this exact lineup has not happened before. So one of the exciting things about these shows is that people see it, and it's special. It is not something that happens at every single night, and they have a unique experience. The show that you choose to go to is a unique show that you get to say you were there.
Yeah, and a Starland Ballroom. I mean, maybe I'm a little biased growing up in New Jersey and obviously the New York scene, but I always feel like the best shows are always placed on the right days of the week. A Friday night Jersey metal show or New York City, that's where it's supposed to be. I know it's going to be electric that night. I can't wait for it. I also just was looking at the opening acts, and I see the band that's warming you guys up is Mean Streak, which is Mike Portnoy's wife and some of the wives of the Dream Theater girls. But these guys are not just like a fly-by-night band. These guys have been around 30 years, female thrash band. I was checking them out on YouTube. They're pretty cool.
Yeah, absolutely. Very good band. I remember hearing about them in the late 80s, early 90s, and definitely part of East Coast heavy history. So it's great that they got back together, and we've got them on this show. And I think, they're going to bring a lot of excitement to the night.
Yeah. Well, we're looking forward to it. Once again, Friday, September 6th, only a couple weeks away at the Starland Ballroom, Sayreville, New Jersey. So, Alex, I really wish you best of luck at that show. Metal Mayhem ROC will be covering it. I hope I get a chance to shake your hand, say hello, take some pictures with you. I'm sure we will. But let's talk about some other things about your year. So, Testament just wrapped up giant summer tour in Europe. I mean, you guys played everywhere, in and out. I think it's cool that you guys played at the Alcatraz Festival and also at Wacken. So, and then you got big tours coming up in both the U.S. and Europe yet again. So, talk about a little bit of the summer plan and the fall plan, I should say. How was the summer shows?
Oh, it was fantastic. We had a great time. I said in another interview that when I rejoined Testament in the second half of the 2000s, it was a different band, and the standard of drumming had gone way up. We've had some real drummers from Gene Hoglan to Dave Lombardo, and I know folks were hoping Dave Lombardo would stay with us. He's very overbooked. It was great. We had a year of touring with him, and he's a great friend and just a monster drummer, and it was awesome. But I'll tell you, nobody's disappointed when they hear the new guy. So the new guy is Christovus. He was not born when the first Testament record came out. So he brings this youthful energy that is just firing everybody up. And it's great, too, because we have a lot of fans in the audience that age. And, it's not just OGs like us. And, this was a great tour. And, we did Wacken. We did, we finished up in Denmark. One of Mr. Big's last shows. One of the exciting things about these European festivals is they're so diverse. We played in Wacken. I think Amon Amarth played the same day, but the Scorpions had played the night before. And Uli Roth, original Scorpions guitar player, one of my musical heroes, he played a short time after us. And it's funny, in Europe you have this mix of styles, and these are events, so it's a lot of fun. So we were there for about 5 weeks. We did a bunch of shows with our friends Behemoth. They're just an amazing band to watch. Nurgle's a real incredible, captivating frontman, also a really smart guy, just great guy to talk to and hang with. And we had a really good time. It was a very worthwhile way to spend summer.
Yeah, I was seeing you you were doing a little promotional video on your Instagram for the Starland show, and you were like, I don't know where you were, the Czech Republic. I see a stable and horses behind you.
Yeah, that was the Czech Republic. That was a show called the Brutal Assault Festival.
Were there actually were you that's where the trailers were for the bands, and it's right on a farm or something?
That's where the backstage was.
Wow.
Yeah, it's actually an old fortress, and there are stables on the grounds. So the dressing room is back. Our dressing room, at least, was back by these stables. The stages are a little further away.
Wow, that's pretty cool. So yeah, you got to keep your suitcase packed. It seems like you're not home in New York City for all that much of the time because, again, now we go into the fall. You're getting out there. I think you're touring with Anthrax in Europe, and then of course Creator. You're coming to Jersey October 10th at the Wellmont Theater. I'll probably be at that one too. That's only a couple months away.
Right.
So talk about those tours.
Yeah, well, that's September 10th, I believe. Kicks off the Testament Creator co-headlining tour all across North America, starting in Reno, going through Canada, and it's very exciting. And we're going to go to Europe in the winter, and yeah, I mean that is not that far away. And I've even squeezed in a short instrumental tour before that. So next week, I'm going out with Percy Jones, legendary bassist from the 70s prog group Brand X that had Phil Collins on drums. And he's considered one of the finest fretless bass players of all time. And it's instrumental music, experimental, but some of the top musicians. Kenny Grahowski on drums, Tim Motzer on guitars and gadgets, although he almost sounds like a keyboardist. We have very different sounds, and that's called Pact, P-A-K-T. And we are playing Asheville, North Carolina, Raleigh-Durham, North Carolina. There's a Prague festival called Prague Day down in Charlotte. We're also playing we're playing in Pennsylvania, and I forget the name of it. It'll come to me in a second. We're also playing in New Jersey, in East Rutherford, the day after Metal Allegiance. So it's going to be kind of a crazy period. And then I have like 2 days before I fly out and start the Testament Creator tour.
Wow, that's amazing. Yeah, like you said, you got to keep your bags packed. You need like a whole trailer just for your guitars and your gear, I suppose, Alex, right? Because a band like Pact, you might be playing different equipment or whatever. But yeah, I know that place well in East Rutherford. It's like an old movie theater.
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah. And it's true. I use completely different gear, whether I'm playing with Pact, my trio, the Stuart Ham Band. We released an album this year. Or Jane Getter Premonition. That's another group I play with. That's also playing on the 7th at the Williams Center.
Okay. Yeah, I was going to talk to you a little bit about your back history. I mean, back in, I guess it was, I don't know, late 90s, early 2000s, I remember you were consistently in the city playing different jazz clubs and, kind of doing either your Skull Patrol project or your Skull Trio. A lot of it was these classic metal songs reinterpreted, like War Pigs and whatever else. So I always loved that stuff because it was still my connection to you as a metal artist, but it was my way to open myself up to say, yeah, there's other kinds of music out there, and your guitar heroes and your rock heroes aren't one-dimensional. That may be the way you thought they were when you were 16. They actually do other stuff.
Yeah, well, that was a way for me to do jazz guitar, but not do it in a way that is typical. There's a typical way of doing it, which is you pick songs from what's called the standard repertoire. And I play a lot of those songs on my own, or I'll play them in duets with jazz musician friends, or combos, but I don't really record those songs, but that's a typical thing. You do these old standards. There's songs like Autumn Leaves, all the things that many jazz players do. And I just thought, okay, given my unique background, what can I bring to it? I could reharmonize some of these songs I grew up on, and I wasn't hearing anybody do it. there are jazz players that do pop music, but it's almost gotten common now. But the Beatles is very common. Radiohead in the 90s became popular with jazz players who were like my age and younger. But I didn't hear anybody touching the Scorpions, and I just thought, you know what, the Scorpions have these amazing melodies. I knew nobody was going to do it.
You break down the songs, right? You break down the songs and you present it to the listener. I mean,
you do something I thought was cool. It was done a long time ago. Charlie Parker in the 40s, he took pop songs from back then, songs that were in music halls, and just made them more interesting to improvise over, added more sophisticated harmony to the chords. So it's a common practice. It's usually done with songs from Broadway shows, or the type of songs Frank Sinatra would have sung. And for some reason, those songs are still, and it makes sense. I mean, they're amazing songs, but for a long time, I think there was like a resistance to doing more modern popular songs as vehicles for improvisation. So for me, it just totally made sense to do it that way. Since then, I've been doing more and more of my own compositions, and I've evolved a lot as a composer, not just in metal, but in instrumental music. So my album that I just did with my trio is almost all originals, except for one. In fact, the last one we did in 2019, called Conundrum, it's the same thing. It's all originals except for arrangement.
So your trio is still active, and you are getting out there when you can and getting on the road or playing some local shows?
Yeah, it's tough with the scheduling, but we have done a couple shows this year. We're planning a tour next year, and we'll squeeze it in between the bigger shows, and the new trio album will come out next year.
Yes, you got a lot on your plate, my friend. Well, it's good to keep you busy. So, just before we get off onto some of your heavy metal history, I also really appreciated. I'm 54 years old. One of my first favorite rock bands of all time when I was 13 was The Police. I think that was the first album, Synchronicity. I remember going to Bradley's on Route 17 in Paramus and buying that cassette, or it was a Caldor, one of those stores. But it's the 40th anniversary of it. It's a great little double disc remastering out there now that has a lot of the songs remixed by Stuart Copeland and some instrumental tracks. But I love the version of King of Pain that you reinterpreted it. And I play it over and over and over again because it was just hearing those harmony parts played by you. It was just really, really cool. So I wanted to thank you for that.
Oh, you're welcome. Well, yeah, I enjoy doing stuff like that. And I don't always have time to get a band together to record it. So that's one of the things I've practiced a lot and worked hard on, is just being able to play solo. And there are players out there who specialize in it. I was always sort of dependent on my bands, but I have such an appreciation for just being able to pull it off alone. It's a whole other skill. And I have a lot more arrangements where that came from. But that was one I felt, okay, you know what, I think I've got this one good enough to share online, at least as a work in progress. And that's one thing I really enjoy about having these social media platforms, as annoying as they are, with the trolls and the oversharing, and I mean, there's so much wrong with social media. But I think as an artist, that has been fantastic, because I can share in that way, and it's also an incentive for me to get it together, to really get it together, not just to have it. Okay, I could maybe play it for a friend and screw it up. No, if I'm gonna put it out there. I'd better feel good about it. So it's great. I can't believe the response I've gotten for that piece. I did a Time After Time as well, acoustic on my old this 1935 Gibson I got, and it's a good way to justify owning a lot of guitars. You can see I have that's just a fraction of the instruments I have, and I figure, okay, if I'm going to own these things, I need to be putting them to use and really playing many different styles of music on them at a high level.
That's true. I hope you have a couple big Doberman pinchers or a big security system. You got to protect that stuff. It's a lot of value in those guitars, buddy.
I have an insurance policy.
There you go. There you go. So, Alex, before we let you go, I wanted to ask you a question about your back history with Savatage, because they were a favorite band of mine, still remaining to this day. I mean, you played 1994 on the Handful of Rain album. I mean, this was a tough time for the band because tragically Chris Oliva was killed in the car accident only a year before. We thought the band was done. You guys come back. You're in the band. It's a great album. And it was also a changing of the guard because it was where John was taking over as the main songwriter. And I think of songs like the title track, Taunting Cobras, and then, of course, the classic Chance, which Chance really set the band up on a whole different, let's say, perspective. Their sound was never the same. I call that like the beginning of part 3 of Savatage, which, of course, spawned the Trans-Siberian Orchestra, which you participated live for years. But again, circling back to the Starland show, I was at that show at the Birchill nightclub in 94. I remember it like it was yesterday. So here we go, full circle again. You and I in the same place at the same time. There it is 30-something years ago. Take us back in time. Talk a little bit about Savatage when you were there.
Yeah, well, as you said, it was in the shadow of this tragic event. That was just incredibly sad. This great guitarist, Chris Oliva, who really was developing too. I remember hearing him around that, a few years before he passed on. In fact, Testament had done a tour with him, and I thought they had gotten a different guitar player because this guy was ripping. And not that he didn't sound good on the records, but the records were more about the songs, and I could hear how much he developed. So it was so sad when that happened. I didn't expect to get this call and be asked to do the record. And at first I wasn't interested in it, only because I had just left a highly dysfunctional musical situation. And I wasn't ready to get into another one. It's like it felt like it would have been jumping into another marriage. You've just gotten out of like the most dysfunctional marriage. You're still really young. You don't even know who you are yet. And it felt like running into another marriage. But I was convinced by John Oliva, and he just said, he knows his brother, and he knows the only guitar player he'd be comfortable coming in on and playing these solos is you. And okay, how do you that? So it was also there was a lot of growth for me there, because up until that point I'd only played with Testament, and I hadn't played with any group that did sort of mid-level tempos, for example, extended power chords where the notes are held and not just hit a million miles an hour, let alone piano. There's actually songs with piano and keyboard. Wow, this is different. So it was a really good growth experience in that way. And I enjoyed the music. I mean, it's strange to think, but the music was so out of fashion. It was about as out of fashion as possible. 1994, right? You think about what's happening in 1994, and it is not that. Hair is out. Guitar solos are out. Process tone is out. We were in the midst of the so-called alternative revolution. So it was really interesting. And a few years before, this band, it was getting played on MTV and seemed like part of, what was happening. Like, in fact, a lot of us, it seemed like things were growing, and suddenly just, the early 90s with after the release of Nevermind, which I loved, and I still love a lot of the Seattle music, but just the way the industry just embraced that music and sort of had a resistance suddenly to anything that resembled the 80s was very strange. But there were enough fans that hung in there and came to check out the band on tour and bought the record. And to this day, that album has a bit of a cult following beyond some of the other Savatage stuff. I think there's fans that are definitely that hone in on that record. I meet them all the time. I sign copies of it. And Guitar World magazine just did this big feature on the 30th anniversary of that record. So it's on stands now. And that, if you want to read about my experience there, that's probably the best description. The writer, Clay Marshall, really got it out of me. She really got me to tell the story, like how it happened, why I didn't stick around. There was talk of sticking around and doing more record, and actually I was open to it, but I really wanted to see it evolve and just become more, raw. Not like we're gonna cut our hair and start playing Fender Jaguars, but no. I thought, you could make this, just make it a little more alive. You could, I know John had introduced me to these Deep Purple records that I wasn't familiar with, like mid-70s Deep Purple. That was just so, I could hear like that, more of that influence. And it ended up, the producer, Paul O'Neill, may he rest in peace, he got inspired, and he saw the group as like a vehicle for doing rock operas. And I got a call from him one day, and he was all excited to get me in the studio because he wrote the next record, with John. I mean, John wrote, I think he had written most of it, but it's a rock opera, and they already had my parts and everything. And I just realized, I was used to, even though I had some creative differences with Testament around the time I'd left, I was still part of the creative team. I was a creative voice, and it was, it felt weird to stay in this situation where, okay, I'm just told solo, and not be part of the creative team. So I didn't stick around, but fast forward a few years, and that one song, the Christmas song, Christmas Eve Sarajevo, becomes a hit, and they end up doing a whole new record based around that song and calling it Trans-Siberian Orchestra. And next thing, that somehow that works. And it taps into a whole new audience that wasn't there, that really had never heard of Savatage, and it became a show. It became this. Once that they developed the live act, I had by that point, I relocated to the East Coast. I was finishing up my university degree. I thought I'm just going to study music and just be like a music educator, play jazz guitar in small clubs. I didn't know. I didn't know what was going to happen. They said, we'd love you to play, but it's only part of the year. It wasn't this full-time thing where I had to, give up everything else I was doing. And for the rest of the 2000s, I was part of the Trans-Siberian Orchestra holiday tour. And so I'd go from playing theaters like the Beacon to Madison Square Garden. I'm working with players like, special guests like Steven Tyler, Roger Daltrey, Joe Walsh. I mean, it's just kind of crazy. So by the time I came, and then by the time Testament got their act together and had matured, and we decided to start working together, I was a whole other player and a whole other performer. I was an arena performer by then. It really kind of, you couldn't have planned it, but it somehow all came full circle. And it's I have a unique history, and that's it's not the main part of it, but it's definitely an important part.
Yeah, that's well. I really appreciate you sharing the inside viewpoint on that, and you do, Alex. You have an amazing career. It's something you should be really proud of, and we were happy to have you on here. So, you mentioned earlier in the show that you have your own podcast. So, talk a little bit about your show. What's your podcast? Yeah,
I started this. It was my pandemic project. And I've been thinking about it for a long time. I wanted to do a project where I sit and create music with other players of different genres. And I recorded a few sessions of folks coming over. One is great current jazz and jazz pop player. His name's Nir Felder, and sits in with Dave Matthews, and he's worked with a lot of favorite musicians of mine. And another guy named Prasanna, who's from India and has this really unique way of playing. And we recorded these sessions and recorded these conversations. And I was planning to put them out, and then the pandemic happened. And suddenly it wasn't safe to be in the same room. But then, next thing you know, we have Zoom, or we have platforms like this. So I started releasing these sessions and conversations, and also having video conversations. And I started working with a podcast network, and they were able to connect me to some favorite players that I wouldn't have been able to reach out to otherwise, like Peter Frampton, for example, Pat Metheny. I just had Al DiMiola on. So it's a really fun way for me to chat with favorite artists of mine, and in some cases toss around a guitar. And it's called Moods and Modes.
Or is it available on all normal channels?
All
Spotify?
Platforms. Yeah. It's on Spotify, it's on Apple. It's not hard to find. I wish I could do it more often. I originally wanted to do it weekly. That turned into twice a month. Lately, it's been monthly because of my schedule, and it takes time to get these together. And I add a lot of my own music, and I get a little creative with the editing, but there's about 50 episodes. The 51st episode is going to drop this week or next week.
Okay. Well, then we'll make sure that this is included in the show notes, the link to your podcast. And yeah, I second you, Alex. I mean, we do this for fun. This is not my day job, my partner, but there's a lot of effort that comes in the front end and the back end in post-production. But the rewarding part, for a guy like me, I get to talk to guys that I've listened and watched for decades, and you're doing the same thing when you're meeting guys like Peter Frampton and Al DiMiola. So it's a modern-day platform of communication if it's done the right way, right? So, Alex, this has been a great 45 minutes of awesome insight. Aside from the podcast, what are your social links? Where else can we find all about Metal Allegiance and Alex Skolnick? Okay,
well, most of my platforms are under my name. I got my name, luckily, before the fans started trying to get it. So it's at Alex Skolnick on Instagram, at Alex Skolnick on Threads, at Alex Skolnick on the Trainwreck that used to be Twitter, but is now known as X. On Facebook, Alex Skolnick official fan page. Metal Allegiance, I believe if you just search for Metal Allegiance, you'll find all the socials. And I have a YouTube channel, The Real Alex Skolnick.
Excellent. That's great. Well, we'll make sure we have all that stuff up on the episode notes.
Also TikTok, although I'm not on TikTok that much, but I drop an occasional TikTok video. It's also The Real Alex Skolnick.
Okay, excellent. So just a reminder, get up to our website, metalmayhemroc.com, and join our community, which is the best way to stay updated on new podcast episodes such as this, interviews with all the artists that we talk to, and everything that's contained on our YouTube channel. As you know, we also do CD and concert reviews, and we have our Monday night radio show, Monday nights on MetalDevastationRadio.com. And of course, if you like what we're doing, please subscribe to us and give us a review of our show on Apple Podcasts. So, Alex, this has been a pleasure. Again, I'm looking forward to meeting you in person again for the first time in a couple of years at this Jersey show in a few weeks, and we'll make sure to say hi. So, for my guest, Alex Skolnick, I'm Metal Walt, and this is Metal Mayhem ROC.
Metal for life.
Thank you for listening to Metal Mayhem ROC. Check out our website at metalmayhemroc.com for information on podcasts, archives, links to all our live radio shows, and all sorts of info. Please like, follow, and share with everyone, even your non-metal friends. And always remember to keep it heavy.